This is Autoline Daily, the show dedicated to enthusiasts of the global automotive industry. Are Canadian drivers better than Americans? Up until 2014, both countries had similar traffic fatality rates. But from 2011 to 2021, fatalities in the U.S. increased 33% to more than 43,000, while in Canada, they fell 18%. Traffic deaths involving pedestrians and cyclists and fatalities involving large trucks and young drivers all increased in the U.S. while they declined in Canada. Even more telling is that Canada is experiencing greater population growth, a growing number of licensed drivers, and more miles driven than the U.S. The Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, or IIHS, says the difference is due to stronger distracted driving and seatbelt laws and more widespread use of speed cameras in Canada. That's why it's calling on lawmakers in the U.S. to adopt similar policies. Ford posted a net loss of $36 million in the second quarter. That's not much of a loss, but a year ago, it made a $1.8 billion profit. So it's quite a swing, and the tariffs played a big role in the change. The company sold 1.1 million vehicles in the last 3 months, up nearly 4%. Revenue hit $50 billion, up almost 5%. But costs on the car-making side of the business went up dramatically by $3.7 billion. And so the company's operating profit dropped 73% to only $511 million. And as noted, it posted a net loss of $36 million. Here are several key takeaways from Ford's earnings call. It's reallocating resources from future EV programs to commercial truck programs for Ford Pro, and will come out with more E-Rev and PHEV retail trucks. It's going to save $1.5 billion for not having to pay for CO2 credits in the U.S., and will save several billion more over the next 2 years. This will especially help the ICE side of the business, Ford Blue, which was hit with those charges. It will richen its mix with more ICE commercial trucks and full-size SUVs that it describes as a multi-billion-dollar opportunity. Its EV operations, called Ford Model E, doubled its revenue to $2.4 billion and improved its margins by 44 basis points, largely thanks to launching the electric versions of the Explorer and Puma in Europe. And over-the-air updates are cutting repair costs by 95%. But 1/3 of all of Ford's warranty costs are still software-related problems. So far this quarter, every single automaker that we've reported on posted significantly lower profits, and they all pretty much blame the tariffs. But what if it turns out that the tariffs aren't legal? Congress is supposed to have the only power for taxation and tariffs. What if the way that President Trump went about enacting them is unconstitutional? Those tariffs could get thrown out. 2 federal courts have already ruled that Trump cannot use the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to impose new tariffs. The Trump administration is appealing those decisions, and will get a ruling from the U.S. Court of Appeals probably in a couple of months. But this case is likely to end up with the Supreme Court, and it could set a historic precedent about the limits or freedom of power of the executive branch versus Congress. And those tariffs took a bite out of Toyota supplier Denso's profits. The company reported that its operating profit declined 11% to $720 million in the most recent quarter. A stronger yen also played a role in the decline. Denso's chief financial officer says it will offset the losses with price hikes and will lower the impact of tariffs by increasing U.S. manufacturing. And Denso isn't the only supplier that's struggling. German supplier ZF says it needs to accelerate its restructuring, which could involve even more layoffs. The company says it needs to cut costs further because of a slowdown in global vehicle production, the slower than expected transition to electrification, and U.S. tariffs. ZF has laid off 11,200 full-time employees since the beginning of 2024 and another 4,700 employees have agreed to partial or early retirement packages.
Developing today's vehicles, issues can happen in an instant. What good is knowing your problems without the data to solve them? Meet Wireless Neovi Cloud, your secure off-the-shelf solution, empowering real-time collaboration for quick resolution. With Wireless Neovi Cloud, your team can prevent issues before they can escalate. Driver communication data and remote diagnostics to analyze and resolve your problems using OTA, allowing your executives oversight throughout the process. Wireless Neovi Cloud, your vehicle update solution in production and on the road. Intrepid Control Systems, driven by your data.
Renault looked from within to hire its new CEO. Former CEO Luca De Meo kind of quit out of nowhere in the middle of June, so it's taken the company about a month and a half to announce Francois Provost as his replacement. Provost has been with Renault for 23 years and most recently held the title of Chief Procurement, Partnerships, and Public Affairs Officer. As Chief Procurement Officer or Head of Purchasing, you have to deal with pretty much every part of the company, so he should have a deep knowledge of how Renault works. Provost says he has already helped launch a new set of countermeasures to deliver on the company's targets, and he will now be part of finalizing a new strategic plan. In the first half of the year, the Renault Group sold about 1.17 million vehicles, up just over 1%. That helped push revenue up 2.5% to about 27.6 billion euros. However, mainly due to a change in the way that it reports its stake in Nissan, its operating income dropped by over 10 billion euros and its net income fell by over 12.5 billion. But going forward, if there's any change in the value of its stake in Nissan based on the performance of Nissan stock, that will no longer be reflected in Renault's net income. Honda opened up a new website dedicated to the Prelude that shows a few details I haven't seen before. There's a full view of the production car's rear end, which is available both with and without a spoiler on the deck lid. The interior is also on full display. It's offered in either a two-tone blue and white combination or all black accented with blue stitching. Those are the main things that we wanted to highlight. But it's possible there's even more that we're missing because the entire website is in Japanese. And there's interviews with designers, engineers, and F1 driver Yuki Tsunoda gets behind the wheel. But even still, there are some cool pictures to check out, including some behind-the-scenes stuff, and watching Tsunoda whip the car around the racetrack is cool too. The new Prelude will first start going on sale this September. Last week, we reported that India's Tata Motors is interested in buying Iveco, the largest truck maker in Europe, and now it's official. Iveco has agreed to sell its truck business to Tata for 3.8 billion euros, or $4.3 billion. As part of the deal, the holding company Exor, which is controlled by the Agnelli family, will sell its 27% stake in Iveco to Tata. Tata plans to buy the remaining shares and delist the truck maker. And in a separate deal, Iveco agreed to sell its defense business to Italian defense firm Leonardo for 1.7 billion euros, or $1.9 billion. But the deal for Tata will give it an even larger presence in Europe, where it already owns Jaguar Land Rover. Last year, Mercedes-Benz helped law enforcement conduct nearly 800 raids, securing over 1.5 million fake Mercedes parts. As you might expect, that includes things like the Mercedes logo. But there's also counterfeit wheels, lights, and even brake pads, which the company says can pose a safety risk to customers. The internet is also a popular place to find fake parts, So, it's no surprise that the over 200,000 counterfeit product listings removed from social media and websites was a nearly 50% increase over 2023. Be sure to tune in this afternoon for Autoline After Hours. We'll have Michael Robinette from S&P Global, as well as Keith Naughton from Bloomberg, going through the latest news and developments. So, join John and Gary when the show goes live at 3 p.m. Eastern Time today. But that's a wrap for this show. Thanks for tuning in.
Autoline Daily is brought to you by Intrepid Control Systems. Over-the-air engineering boost your game. And by